Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. My name is Fred Ridley, and I have the honor of serving as chairman of Augusta National Golf Club in the Masters Tournament. With me today are two good friends and two of my fellow members. To my left is Craig Heatley, who you all know well, who chairs our media committee. To my right is Jim Heiler, who serves as chairman of the competition committees. On our behalf, and on behalf of our entire membership, we want to welcome you, as well as our loyal patrons and golf fans watching around the world, to the 83rd Masters Tournament. Like everyone who loves this great game, we are excited to see what may unfold this week as golf's best players assemble for our annual springtime tradition. At the same time, I want to acknowledge that two of our friends are sadly missing. Last May, we lost our 1957 Masters champion, Doug Ford. Doug loved the Masters, and he came back to Augusta each year as a proud champion. Last evening was the annual gathering of Masters champions and old friends. That occasion is not quite the same when someone is missing, and that indeed was the case last night. All who were lucky to call Doug a friend agree. His legacy will always be honored here at Augusta National. More recently, we were saddened by the passing of the great Dan Jenkins. We were fortunate Dan made the Masters his destination, his priority for the past 68 years. During that time, he blessed us with his masterful prose and his quick wit, which flowed from the printed page into countless conversations and friendships he made here at Augusta National. So this week, we celebrate Dan Jenkins and all he meant to the Masters Tournament for so many years. Covering the Masters was only part of the reason Dan loved Augusta. More importantly was the bond he shared with all of you, his closest friends, with whom he would reunite every April without interruption, without fail. Dan will be remembered for the words he wrote, the stories he told, and the people whose lives he touched. 85 years ago, the Augusta National Invitation Tournament was held as a gathering of friends, conceived by our co-founders Clifford Roberts and Bobby Jones. From that beginning, the Masters quickly became a competition that defined greatness in this sport. And come Sunday, just as it has been since 1934, someone's life will be forever changed. For this latest edition, we welcome a field of 87 players from 22 different countries, 6 of whom are amateurs, and 17 first-time invitees. They will encounter a golf course that has been magnificently prepared, although Mother Nature has provided a few challenges during our preparations this year. The first came earlier in the season during our overseed period when we saw 4 times the amount of normal rainfall. To say that growing conditions were a challenge would definitely be an understatement. And given the recent rainfall, the course will not play as firm and as fast as we would like it. Nevertheless, thanks to the excellent work of our golf course and nursery teams, we're ready to provide a proper test for the best players in the world. As has been reported, last summer, the 5th tee was moved back and shifted away from the 4th green. In doing so, the fairway landing area was regraded and the bunkers were repositioned. While this hole now measures 40 yards longer, we believe this change maintains the original design philosophy of Bobby Jones and Alistair McKenzie. It not only continues our commitment to keep the course in step with the changing state of the game, but we believe it will have a positive impact on pace of play. As part of this renovation, we took the opportunity to rebuild and slightly enlarging the 5th green. In doing so, we were able to make adjustments to the back left portion of the putting green in order to support new hole locations. But an exciting byproduct of this construction is the improvements to our patron experience. For the first time, we will route patrons down the right side of the 4th hole, as well as behind the green, providing an attractive vantage point for this challenging par 3. The new tee at number 5 also provides for additional viewing areas, so we feel these holes have been much improved from a patron perspective. It should come as no surprise to any of you that we continue to study other enhancements to the golf course. That includes much talked about changes, potential changes to the 13th hole. Admittedly, that hole does not play as it was intended to play by Jones and McKenzie. The momentous decision that I've spoken about and that Bobby Jones often spoke about of going for the green in 2 is to a large extent no longer relevant. Although we now have options to increase the length of this hole, we intend to wait to see how distance may be addressed by the governing bodies before we take any action. In doing so, we fully recognize that the issue of distance presents difficult questions with no easy answers. But please know this, the USGA and the R&A do have the best interests of the game at heart. They recognize the importance of their future actions. You can be assured that we will continue to advocate for industry-wide collaboration and support of the governing bodies as they resolve this very important topic. As we state every year, we're bound to a tradition of constant improvement. We maintain Mr. Roberts' philosophy that nothing stands still. We have committed always to move forward, and we always will strive to do it in a manner that serves the competitors in the Masters, our patrons, consumers of our content, and the game of golf as a whole. With the much appreciated support of the City of Augusta and the state of Georgia, this summer we will begin a multi-year development of a portion of our project north of Washington Road. Site work already is underway, and in a matter of weeks, we will commence construction of a tunnel connecting an area near Gate 1 to new development on the north side of the road. This project is the first of its kind in the state of Georgia. Thanks to modern engineering, we will be able to excavate under Washington Road without any impact to the flow of traffic above. The result of this project will be a pathway that will lead us into a future as we expand various tournament services, including initially a state-of-the-art television and digital compound. This project will become our global broadcast village. It will greatly improve the environment and services for those who, along with you, help tell the story of the Masters. And through our ability to adapt and expand this facility, it will serve us well as we deliver quality content to our fans, anywhere, anytime. In that vein, this week, we're very excited to unveil a new feature on all Masters digital platforms. For the first time ever in golf, we will capture virtually every shot of every player during every competitive round. This extensive library of content will be available on our website and apps through the leaderboard and track features. Within minutes of every shot, this added content will now allow our fans online to follow their favorite players from their drive off the first tee to their final putt on the 18th green. I would also like to highlight the continuing work being done by the Masters Tournament to contribute to the development of the game. Since we saw you last, we celebrated 10 years of the Asia Pacific Amateur Championship and 5 years of the Latin America Amateur Championship. Last Sunday, we held the 6th Drive, Chip, and Putt National Finals. We believe all three of these collaborative efforts are achieving their stated goal: to inspire a new generation of golfers who will make this sport their passion for a lifetime. As you know, just this past week, our latest Grow the Game effort, the inaugural Augusta National Women's Amateur, brought 72 of the world's top women amateur golfers together here in Augusta. Thanks to our valuable partners and with the enthusiastic support of our membership and our exceptional staff, we believe we have created a platform that not only will increase interest in this important segment of our sport, but in a larger sense, will shine a bright light on the amazing accomplishments of women everywhere. I want to congratulate Jennifer Kupcho on her well-earned victory and thank all of the competitors for their participation. I also invite each and every person who loves this sport to introduce women of all ages to the game: a relative, a friend, a colleague at work. Let's share the values of this game and the opportunities golf presents. Our hope and our ambition is very simple: to make a difference. And we believe the Augusta National Women's Amateur is a good start. Before I close, I would like to acknowledge one of your own among us this morning, Mr. Jerry Tardy. Jerry is a longtime editor-in-chief of Golf Digest, and his 40 years of covering the Masters will be recognized tonight when he receives the Masters Major Achievement Award. Jerry, we offer our sincere congratulations, and we thank you for the way you have covered the Masters for the last 4 decades. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank you again for all being here. I'm happy to take a few of your questions. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Questions, please, ladies and gentlemen. Brett?
Thank you, Mr. Heatley. Chairman Ridley, when I watch other tournaments on television, I notice lots of cell phones. I notice lots of yelling. Will you please talk about the decorum in place at Augusta National that sets the Masters apart?
Well, thank you. I think that's something that does set us apart. I think our patrons appreciate our cell phone policy. I know that we have now become an outlier, if not the only outlier in golf, as far as allowing cell phones. But I think it's part of the ambiance of the Masters. And you know, I read Rory's interview yesterday, Rory McIlroy, when he made some very insightful comments about that. And he said that it was really nice, you know, to be out there on the golf course and not seeing, you know, everyone looking down at their hand with their cell phone. So I don't believe that's a policy that anyone should expect is going to change in the near future, if ever. I can't speak for future chairman, but speaking for myself, I think we've got that right.
What about the loud yelling you hear other places? It doesn't happen here.
We encourage our patrons to exhibit proper decorum. It's right on the pairing sheet. There's a great quote from Bobby Jones about that and the importance of good behavior and how distressing it is for someone to applaud a bad shot, which you do hear from time to time at other places. But there's something about Augusta National when someone walks through the gates, they know that it's a place of respect, of beauty, and honoring the traditions and values of the game. So it's something I don't think, and I certainly hope, never changes.
Thank you.
John?
Mr. Chairman, with regards to the 13th hole, the easy answer has seemed to always be move the tee back. Couple of questions. Have there been any discussions about possibly just moving the tee to the left, opening up that right side of the fairway and making that second shot a little longer? And how hesitant are you about making changes to Amen Corner?
Well, I think to answer your first question about moving the tee to the left, I mean, we've looked at a number of options, not only for that hole, but for a lot of holes, and we'll continue to do that. I mean, my personal feeling, which I stated, is there's been a comprehensive undertaking by the USGA and the R&A, not only with respect to rules changes, but with respect to distance. There's been a 2-year study that has recently concluded, and I think everyone involved now is sort of going through the process of thinking about, what are the options. And as I stated, while there's no hesitation on my part or historically on the part of Augusta National to make changes that are necessary, I mean, that's been observed through the years. Amen Corner is a sacred place in the world of golf, and I am hesitant to move too quickly in that regard. And so my preference, as I stated, would be to see what happens, what the governing bodies decide is best for the game, and then we will take appropriate action in response to that.
Gary.
Mr. Chairman, you're 20 years into the second cut. I want to know what you think the overarching effect that's had on tournament play. And the other thing is, the club made the choice to start installing a fair number of trees at a time when hundreds of clubs across the country were removing a lot of trees, a lot of them for agronomic concerns and issues. And how much evaluation is the club doing about maybe removing some trees?
You're right. There many clubs around the country and the world are removing trees. That is primarily, as you stated, for agronomic reasons, and I'd like to think that agronomically we're about as nice as any place in the world. The towering pines of Augusta National have been part of our history, and many of these pines are now what we call third or fourth generation pines, and while they're beautiful, they're nearing the end of their expected life. And so what we're doing is really just a reforestation program to make sure that we have trees that are there to replace those that are nearing the end of their life. And of course, we did suffer some damage, as everyone knows, in the ice storm a few years ago. There have been a couple of occasions where trees have been planted for strategic reasons, and we'll continue to look at that. But we'll also look at removing trees if we think that's in the best interest of the strategy of the golf course. But I think the Georgia pines are part of our history, and they're not going to go anywhere.
Your thought on the second cut, 20 years in?
Of course, when I played here as an amateur, there was no second cut. But for the most part of our history, there has been a second cut. And it was not new to the club and the course when it was put in 20 years ago. I mean, I think that's an element for debate. I think the conventional wisdom is that it does add a bit of uncertainty, particularly when you think about that players are hitting shots into greens that usually are very firm. And so it adds just a little bit of uncertainty, takes a little bit of spin off the ball. So I do think it adds some element of difficulty, and I think it served its purpose.
Richard?
Mr. Chairman, could you talk about the growing footprint of Augusta National here in the immediate area and the possibility of a dedicated exit from Interstate 20 to your parking lots?
Richard, we have over the years taken what we feel is appropriate action to try to make sure we're continually meeting the demands, the growing demands of putting on the biggest golf event in the world. And we have expanded our footprint for a number of really good reasons. One of them is the building that we're sitting in today. We also were able to create years ago under Hootie Johnson's chairmanship a world-class practice facility for the competitors by moving 4,000 automobiles out of that area, and that obviously takes a lot of space to do that. And so we're continually looking out not just what do we need next year or 5 years from now, but what's the Masters going to look like 20 years from now or 50 years from now. And so we'll always look at that options. As far as the dedicated exit, don't know a lot about that. I know it's in discussion, and certainly would be a great benefit for the tournament. But I'm sure it's something that'll continue to be discussed.
Anne?
Mr. Chairman, were you surprised by the success of the first women's amateur, and what may be next in the club's efforts to grow the game?
I don't, you know, when you plan something like that, it's hard to really predict what's going to happen. On paper, I felt that we knew what was going to happen. I mean, it was scheduled. Our staff, working with our partner at Champions Retreat and our sponsors and everyone involved, did a masterful job executing on our plan. What I'm not sure I fully anticipated was the emotional response, and which was something that I'm still really glowing about. And that is that of everybody involved, certainly of the players who had an opportunity to compete on a stage unlike any they had ever competed on. But beyond that, and certainly their families and their friends and everyone involved with the players. But beyond that, I think I was really heartened by our staff and the way that our staff really was motivated and inspired by this effort. I think it made us a better organization. I'm also very proud to hear so many members who have come up to me and say how proud they are, and to say that they have never been prouder to be a member of Augusta National. So it's those emotional, those subjective elements that I'm not sure I fully anticipated. But it's been something that we've been very pleased about. It was an exciting celebration, exciting golf, elite athletes showing what they can do. It was a Sunday-like, a Masters-like Sunday, even though it was on Saturday. But it certainly had that feel. As to what we might do next, I'm still thinking about last Saturday, so I'll start thinking about that next week.
Daniel?
As far as the planning process for the women's amateur, how long was the idea floating around before the decision to have the tournament? And also, can you take me through the decision to have an amateur tournament rather than a tournament for maybe professionals? What went through that decision?
Yeah. The first part of the question, how long was the idea floating around? We usually don't float ideas around very often, for very long, but we don't float ideas to begin with. Seriously, I understand your question. I want to say that I think certainly the idea of using the assets we've been blessed with to promote the game of golf has been something that's been part of the history of Augusta National since it began. For many years, the Masters tournament was really the way we did that. And then 10 years ago, 12 years ago, under Billy Payne's leadership, we branched out. We transformed the par 3 contest into something that became a family day, a fun family day that was televised for the first time a dozen years ago. We extended that with our international tournaments, trying to create young heroes that could go back to their home countries and be role models. Then the drive, chip, and putt, and so really what we were doing was an extension of that. And the first week that I arrived here as chairman in October of 2017, I raised the issue with Will Jones, our executive chairman. I told him I thought that it was time we did something for women's golf. And I thought if we really meant what we said, that we should do it here at Augusta National. And I also said that I think we should announce it at the Masters tournament, which we did last year. I can't remember the second part of your question.
About the decision to have an amateur event rather than maybe an event for
Right.
professionals.
Well, I think part of that kind of goes back to history, and that is that Augusta National was co-founded by the greatest amateur of all time, To date, all of our Grow the Game initiatives have been focused on amateur golf and amateur golfers. In this particular case, we elected to conduct a women's amateur tournament for that same reason, but we really wanted this to continue in a Grow the Game sort of mode. But having said that, I do think that what has happened is going to translate and be a real benefit for professional golf and for the LPGA. The LPGA is clearly the strongest women's sports organization in the world. They now have a group of women, two in particular, who were spotlighted for 3 hours on Saturday, who will be joining the LPGA Tour after the collegiate season. They both qualified. Jennifer and Maria Fassi both qualified for the LPGA Tour. They're going to come out with a lot of fanfare and a lot of attention. They were in New York on Monday, as most of you know, on the Today Show, and Jimmy Fallon. I heard reports that they were walking the streets of New York and people recognized them and walked up to them. So I have to think that that's going to be good for women's golf in general. And I think that they're going to be well received by the LPGA and are going to get off to a great start in their careers there.
David?
Mr. Chairman, has there been any effort to get badges for spectators off the secondary market or maybe limit that?
As you know, our credentials are very reasonably priced. Secondary markets are an issue in every sporting event, and we're no exception. There's sort of an element that comes with that it just doesn't seem very healthy. And so when we're aware of it, when we know about it, we take action. There's certain laws regarding scalping that have to be, in Georgia, that have to be adhered to. It's not something we really like, but to some extent it's inevitable in sports. But we do try to be vigilant in enforcing our ticket policy.
Are you worried that a bigger chunk of the tickets are not being, or of the badges are not being used in the correct manner, that it's kind of getting worse instead of better maybe?
I think any comment I might make would be anecdotal. We certainly don't have any evidence of that. The Masters ticket is a very, very valuable, commodity in sports, and we know there's going to be a lot of that. But we'd like to think that most of our patrons respect our ticket policy, but we know that some don't.
Christine?
Thank you, Craig. Fred, I think this might be a master's record of conversation, positive conversation about women in the game of golf, and that's wonderful. And as you said, Saturday was terrific, and your call to introduce women to the game is certainly notable. But as you know, for decades, there was a stop sign, basically, a symbolic stop sign that was put out by restrictive clubs saying women were not members, didn't necessarily send a positive message to women and girls to play the game. So I'm wondering, in hindsight, was it a mistake to be so restrictive for so long?
Well, Christine, I think that everyone, no matter what the issue is, we can always look back and say we could do better, no question. But what my focus is on the future, and where we are now, and where we want to go. And I don't think it's particularly, it is instructive. It's always instructive to look at the past. We learn from the past. But I think what's most productive is to look at where we are today, realize that throughout the history of this club, we have promoted the game, and we've now identified a really important segment, the fastest growing segment of the game, that we can help make a difference. We can't do it all by ourselves, but we can help make a difference. So I'm just so excited by what happened last week and we're so enthusiastic about the potential for this event and for what we can do working with others to promote women's golf that I'm not focused too much on the past right now. I'm really looking ahead. I don't know if you had an opportunity, you probably did, to see some of the promotional ads from our sponsors. I mean, I have to tell you, they were terrific. And they went well beyond golf. They used golf as a theme and as a medium, but they really showed what women are doing in the world right now. And I'm proud of that. Thank you.
Bob.
Fred, the flag stick issue, it became more of a talking point in the pro game maybe than was expected when the new rule came aboard. First of all, do you yourself putt with the flag stick in? Are you okay with it happening here at the Masters? And did you guys have any input into that new rule?
Yeah, I do. I'm not sure what I do makes a lot of difference, but I do putt with it in every once in a while, you know. And I think I'm seeing more and more people do that, and including on the tour. Certainly for longer putts, it seems to make sense. I mean, I think if you go back in time, you know, there was a day when the flag stick was left in. I mean, there was a day when you move your opponent's ball in the putting green. They played stymied. So there's been a lot of changes through the years. So, I mean, personally, I don't have a problem with the rule, but I know one of the motivations was to improve pace of play, and hopefully it's doing that. As far as whether we would have any consideration of not following that rule, no, there would not have been any consideration. I mean, you know, we are aligned, you know, with the governing bodies on following the rules, and we certainly are free to have input, and our comments would have been respected. But I can't say that we really had any influence on what the governing bodies did. I mean, we partner with them in a lot of things, but we believe that they are best suited to promulgate and implement the rules of golf.
Tim.
Chairman Ridley, there's been some back channel talk among players and caddies about a possible new pin placement back right at 18. What could you tell us about that?
I couldn't quite understand.
Sorry, Tim, could you say that again, please?
Sure. There's been some back channel talk by players and caddies about a new pin placement back right at 18. What could you tell us about that?
Okay, thanks, Tim. The 18th green was a green we rebuilt this summer, and we captured or recaptured some areas on the back part of the green that had been lost to encroachment, which is really a natural process in all golf greens over time. So there is a larger area both on the back left and the back right, and the back right I think is going to give us an opportunity for a really good hole location. There's plenty of room back there, but it kind of looks like it's almost tucked, almost in the bunker when you're on in the fairway. So, I mean, the thinking there really was just really to try to reestablish what was there before that we had lost over the years. And I think I've heard some good comments. I was at the Champions Dinner last night, and you know, everybody seemed to think it was a good change.
David?
This is in regard to what Bob also said. So we're 3 months into a lot of new rule changes, and there's been a transitional period. Do you feel like players have settled down, they understand the rules, are they comfortable with it, and do you anticipate any problems this week?
The rules process was I think a collaborative one. I mean, there was lots of opportunity from all stakeholders for input. It was a fairly lengthy process, but it also was, I believe, the first major rules sort of overhaul, if you will, in about 30 plus years. So with that type of backdrop, I think it's natural that there's going to be some adjustment period to it. And you know, there have been some fits and starts, admittedly, but I think there's been good communication. I think Jay Monahan had some very instructive comments, I think, at his press conference at the Players Championship. And I do think things are settling down now. I know the governing bodies have reacted to a couple of specific situations and are considering, and I think in some cases, Jim, have proposed some modifications. You may want to comment on that.
Well, as the chairman said, new rules, massive change. There is a period of adjustment. There was a lot of chatter about some of the rules. The USGA and RNA have looked at some of these issues, and even last night issued a new model local rule around damaged clubs. So they are going through a period of adjustment and reacting to comments, and will continue to do so.
Doug?
I wanted to ask you about the digital project you have with the tracking feature. You're talking about showing shots from every player of every round, the entire tournament. Can I ask why you're doing it?
Why we're doing it? The reason we're doing it is because we've always subscribed to the notion that we want to provide content to our fans in the way they want to receive it. And the world is migrating more and more towards digital technology. It was something that we thought and that we were hearing that our fans wanted. And with a lot of great work of our digital technology committee and our staff, we were able to develop this. It's been 2 or 3 years in developing. We had it in a beta test mode previously, but now feel like that we can actually execute on this. So we just thought it was something that people wanted and was supplemented our other forms of providing coverage to the tournament.
Yeah, so made me think of it. If you look at for years, your broadcast schedule has always been the smallest window of all the majors. There's always been a feel of just giving them enough to keep them coming back. Was there any discussion about giving fans too much?
I think there's always that discussion, and I think it's a balance of. I mean, what really drives us is quality, and we could have come out with this a year or so ago, but we weren't ready, and so I think quantity is important, but that's not what is going to drive our decisions. We're not going to sacrifice quality, but we thought this was a great supplement to our traditional means of providing coverage.
2 more questions. Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since design and integrity of this golf course is so important to you, and you mentioned earlier about waiting for the USGA and the RNA and the reporting in regards to distance, could you foresee a situation where you might do something other than lengthening the golf course to be able to rein in distance on this course?
Something other than lengthening it?
Yes, like something like a ball of some type?
Yeah, well, I think just we can answer that question in a couple of ways. One is I'll just address the ball issue. That's been a topic for a long time. I think it's very unlikely that we would ever produce a Masters ball. There are a whole lot of reasons for that, but I think you can be pretty assured that that's the case. As it relates to other things we might do, there are numerous architectural enhancements, if you will, that have been made to the Augusta National course over the years, and there are a lot of options we have for making the course more difficult that don't necessarily translate into distance, or to lengthening the course. But we have to face the reality that quite a few of these players hit the ball prodigious distances, and we do have to deal with that. So we're fortunate that we have the opportunity. If we do need to lengthen the course in most places, we can do it. But there's certainly other ways that we can challenge the best players in the world, and that's something I'm going to be looking at.
Just a final question, Ian.
Given your thoughts on the positive impact of the women's amateur and also your stated desire to focus on the future, can you see a day in the not too distant future where this club hosts a professional women's event involving the best players in the world? And if not, why not?
I think as I mentioned before, I mean, our focus throughout our history has been on as far as our efforts to promote the game outside of the Masters have always been on amateur golf. I think what we would like to do and hopefully will achieve is doing things that will benefit professional golf, benefit professional women's golf, in all of golf, but by promoting women amateurs, the future stars of the Ladies Professional Golf Association, you know, we'd like to think that that is something that's going to benefit them as well. And I think that the LPGA would agree. So that's the tack that we're going to continue to take.
Follow, wouldn't the most obvious benefit be focusing and highlighting the best players in the world as you do on the men's side? Wouldn't that have the greatest positive impact?
Yeah, could you just speak up a little bit, Ian?
Oh, sorry. Just as a follow-up, wouldn't the greatest benefit be highlighting the best female players in the world as you do on the men's side? Wouldn't that have the greatest impact on the women's game?
Well, I guess that's a matter of opinion. But again, we're really looking to the future, and you know, we also have to be respectful of the Masters tournament, and which is one of the reasons why we had a partner that put this championship on with us, a Champions Retreat. We were trying to balance providing the women competitors with the opportunity to be at Augusta National, to have a championship decided at Augusta National, but yet, you know, be cognizant of the fact that we were we were just a few days away from the Masters tournament. So if you sort of, you know, put it in context with the Masters sort of being the epicenter of our competitive, you know, tournament administration efforts, we do have some limitations as to what we could do, and we try to balance that in deciding how can we best deploy our resources for the good of the game, in this case, the women's game. So I think that's the approach we're going to continue to take.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, everyone.